Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all for joining us today for our webinar on what it means to be a self-aware author. My name is Lauren Charles, and I'll be our moderator today. Before I hand you over to our talented co-hosts, I wanted to address some housekeeping items. First off, we'll be live tweeting this entire event, and we would really love it if you would join in the conversation. You can do so by using the widget in the right hand of your screen. You can use our handles at IngramSpark, at Presk, and hashtag SparkSpeaks. So please join in. We would love to talk with you. Second, if you have a question at any point during the presentation, please use the widget at the bottom of your screen. We have 2 team members just itching to help, so please take advantage with any questions, even if it doesn't have to do particularly with today's event. Another thing we want to talk about is on the left side of your screen, you'll see a resource list. Part of that resource list is a printable version of today's presentation. Those include some key takeaway items that you can use at later times and that we hope are helpful to you concerning today's topics. We also want to mention that this presentation will be recorded, and if you have to leave at any point, you can join in, you can log in just like you did today and watch the entire presentation beginning to end. You can also share that with any other team members you might have who might be interested in today's topic. But with that in mind, we do want to say we have a special giveaway that will be handed out at the end of the presentation, so we really hope that you stay tuned. So I think that about covers it for me. So without further ado, I'm pleased to welcome Ellie Davis, owner of Presk, and our own Robin Cutler. Thank you so much, and take it away.
Hey, Lauren. Welcome, everyone. This is Robin Cutler of IngramSpark. And before we hand it over to our very dynamic and talented Ellie Davis to give us a great overview of editing and the importance of editing your book, I just kind of want to walk you through just a few important things on the front end, explaining about Ingram, what Ingram actually does, and a little bit of background on IngramSpark for all of you who may be new to IngramSpark so that you just have more information. So as some of you may know, Ingram is the world's largest book distributor. So currently, publishers provide their content to us, and then we resell that content to our retail and library partners. And currently, we work with about 39,000 partners. And to show the breadth of our distribution network, you know, Amazon is only one of those 39,000 partners. So Ingram is essential in terms of making your book available as broadly as you can in the marketplace. So when we're talking about Ingram and the reach of Ingram, I just wanted to put this slide up so you could see exactly who we touch. We sell to global and regional chain stores, to independent retailers, to university bookstores, internet retailers like Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Most bookstores now have their own retail and internet sites, so we reach all of them. Gift stores, specialty stores, museum stores, and like I said earlier, libraries are an important part of Ingram's distribution. So a few years ago, actually 2 years ago to be exact, at the 1st of July, we actually launched IngramSpark, which basically put together Ingram's on-demand programs that we had. One of the on-demand services that we offer is through our company Lightning Source, which is the world's premier print-on-demand company, as well as our e-distribution platform. So we put those services together, print-on-demand and e-distribution, and made that available specifically for indie publishers. We created a new user interface. We made it really easy and affordable to set up your titles for both print and e-distribution at a very low cost of only $49. And then through that setup and setup fee, you have access to all of Ingram's global distribution, which is, again, those 39,000 retail and library partners. So that's kind of at a very high level what Ingram and IngramSpark is all about. But I want to focus in, especially while we have Ellie Davis here joining us today, to really talk about her service, Press, and also to answer and talk about editing in general. So without further ado, Ellie, you want to take it away here?
Sure. So this slide that's up, I really wanted folks to, or I'm at least intrigued with it, of New York Times best-selling authors. Now, I looked on the list yesterday, or a few days ago, and with you, not one author on that list does not acknowledge his or her editor. And I think that relationship is so incredibly important, especially if you're an indie writer, in the sense that, we have the acquisitions editors, we have copy editors, we have agents, and all of those roles have kind of morphed into what my editors accomplish for indie authors. So in a sense, we help authors prepare their manuscripts for publication. We also help authors find agents. But for the most part, we try to offer folks a team that tightens the narrative, make sure everything is grammar and punctuation-wise right on point. We have a slew of editors scattered all over the U.S. We have a few in Canada and Europe. We actually have one based in Tasmania right now. But for the most part, I work as an appointment setter. So I basically review a manuscript and figure out what it needs, and then find an editor that's best suited for the project. So we have editors that, most of our editors have MFAs, but we also have a couple with MBAs to help with the business titles. We have one woman that just focuses on fashion titles. We have a couple that do self-help. A couple that just do science fiction titles, and a few that just do Christian titles. But really, again, that relationship is important.
So, Ellie, part of your service is matching up the author with a specific editor that can handle the content that they've created, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I feel, most of what we get through our doors, a developmental edit, a copy and line edit, the first part is that editorial review that's so important. And really all we try to do is, again, be the best reader possible. So that beyond just punctuation and grammar, it's about listening to what our author needs and finding how we can help strengthen the manuscript and make it as marketable as possible. There are a lot of books out there that are just, trying to make it in the marketplace, and then we have other projects that are more just labors of love for family, and so our goal is just to make each one as succinct and professional as possible.
Yeah, and the service that you offer IngramSpark customers of the free editorial review is really fantastic. And I'll just share with our audience, I submitted a manuscript that I had written to Ellie, just to see what that editorial review looked like. And what I got back from her, I was pretty astounded with the depth that you went into, to provide feedback and suggestions even at that level about, what I could do to make the book better. So I really encourage IngramSpark customers, authors, even people that are just now considering IngramSpark as a platform to really check out this service that Press offers.
I think, writing is such a solitary act And so, I mean, editing is something we do in relation to another person. So editing mostly, it comes down to listening and to helping other people tell their stories, and it's about providing feedback. And so, I mean, when it comes to nonfiction, you know, we are just trying to make certain that everything is sort of accessible to a reader. But when it comes to fiction, it's really, I mean, I always say it's, at least when I tackle a project, it's as if I've dumped, you know, we've dumped 12 jigsaw puzzles on the table, and we're trying to get everything in a way that's really engaging for the reader and cutting away what doesn't work and really celebrating what does. I always use it that I'm an electrician, but it's that jigsaw analogy that I think people need to, you know, I think a lot of times writers have a hard time seeing the forest for the trees, and they just need someone to bring them back to the story and to their characters and how to keep things moving along.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So one of the things here that I know Lauren reminded and told people, you know, along the way here, any questions that you might have, make sure that you use the Q&A field, send them to us, and either we have a team that can respond directly that is monitoring this field, or we will respond directly at the end of the presentation. So let's talk about, Ellie, why we are working together. And from my perspective, what I wanted to do was, I know that editing is so essential in terms of creating content and making the content as good as you can. It's always better through a collaboration with an editor. So what I wanted to do with IngramSpark was offer a service that our customers could tap into that I knew was a good service, a first-rate service, and you know, the customer would benefit from. So from my perspective, that's why we're partnering together. And in terms of, you know, all the services that we recommend from IngramSpark, you know, it's always, the intention is to just help the customer have the best book possible. You know, you work so hard to write, and as Ellie said, you know, it's such a solitary and really difficult thing to do. That's why most people don't write books. It's so hard to do all of that, and you know, to then take it to the next level, to make your book absolutely the best it can be, is what we're all about here at Ingram, and I know that that's what Ellie's about too.
And so I think this next one is mine about when to submit a manuscript. And this kind of breaks down to two things. For us, obviously, if there's a problem, we often work with authors who maybe just have gotten stuck somewhere. And but other times, it's just that they're ready. They know they're taking an indie route. They know they're going to publish the book, and they want to get it as tight as they can for publication. For me, I like a few weeks heads up. I like someone to be in that, writing that last chapter. I like to have done an editorial review, and I like to have it sort of in the pipeline for whoever it is I've paired the author with. For the most part, nonfiction, you know, it's just as important, but a few weeks just so we can get the scheduling done. Again, I'm just a glorified appointment setter. But I would say if a writer is trying to get an agent, then usually we like to help the author craft the letter, you know, their inquiries to agents.
Oh, that's really great.
Now, so, and I mean, I would say, and then, you know, we also work with writing book proposals, and so kind of the rule of thumb is fiction, you should have the book done. And nonfiction, you can write a book proposal and see if someone could potentially sell it to a publisher just based on the topic. So, and for me, I mean, there was a book we did, it was going to be on Radio Reader, and then on NPR, Dick Estelle, and it was actually published in a second printing, and they noticed so many errors that we were hired to fix the book before it was on NPR. So, editing, for me, there's never a bad time for it.
Yeah.
I think, but for the most part, if there's a problem, typically my editors are not book coaches. They're not coaching folks, but, project management aside, we have found a lot of nonfiction authors sort of really respond to having deadlines. So they need us just to keep them on point so they can finish the book. It just depends. Each project is different. So I guess, before publication, one hopes. But even after publication, if you're going to be on Radio Reader, give us a call.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I want to jump in here and just kind of elaborate a little bit about that. So after a book is published, if you do find that you have errors, the great thing about the IngramSpark service is that, it's an on-demand service even through printing. So if you're using IngramSpark and you need to make changes, say you hire Ellie after the fact and she finds all these things she wants to change in your book, then basically all you have to do is go back to the original file, make those changes there and then upload it into IngramSpark, and you're good to go with your new version. There's not inventory, that's dated or that's wrong, that's kind of sitting there on a shelf. So that's a really good point, and I'm glad you brought that up, Ellie, after publication. So let's talk a little bit, because we have a number of customers that have asked us about translations. Do you provide that kind of service? And if you do, when is the best time for an author to consider a translation?
This is interesting to me, and I think for years the agents they would go to the London Book Fair and there would be this whole race to get the translations in the typical in the traditional publishing world. Now I don't know. I don't foresee a time where everyone will come out with a Spanish translation or a French translation, but I think as far as emerging markets go, there's I don't, if you have the money, I don't see why someone wouldn't. If they can, once it's up on IngramSpark, you can sell it anywhere. So that translation could be really valuable to have. But I don't know. A lot of the books we work on that are translation are children's books, and they are doing this coinciding French and Spanish or French and English or Spanish and English on the different pages. But as far as the books we typically have done are nonfiction books, even British English, believe it or not, which isn't really a translation, but kind of falls in that. But if you think you have, some sort of marketing, and a book comes to mind that took place in Mexico, and so it was written by an American, a guy living in Maryland. But, he had written a story set in Mexico, and it seemed pretty obvious to start marketing it in Mexico, or, and have the Spanish translation available. But I think, in general, I don't know. Does IngramSpark kind of guide people on this?
We allow for to set up a book in various markets with various pricing and currencies in other countries. But it's easy. If you translate a book, you can set that up in your IngramSpark account, make it available. Provide a different ISBN than say the English version, and then you're good to go, just like any other format or edition of the book. So, but it's good. It's good to know that you offer this service because we do get people interested.
Well, I would note just that I think more and more folks will go from the Spanish language to the English language in the next few years.
Mm-hmm.
So, talking about the top reasons to edit a book, for me, and I don't want to jump in front of you in answering this, Robin, but it's just so it's marketable and professional. I don't think there's a case in publishing history where a book hasn't been improved through the editorial process. And all the major, and classic, part of the literary canon now, there are all kind of stories about, how an editor just, worked so closely with the writer and just made the book so much better. So I just think that it's just one of the things you just have to do. As a writer, you sit there, you think you have it complete and perfect, and it's not until you work with an editor that you really see, the value that they bring to the work itself. And myself as an author, I can verify that when I've worked through an editorial process, my content has greatly been improved, and even the voice of the work itself, sometimes, I will change depending on, what the editor recommends. And so I really encourage and think that, after you've written, the next step should be absolutely that you have the book edited. Just do it and invest in that, and you won't be sorry for it. Well, I think too, for me, and there's this J.K. Rowling, the first Harry Potter book. There's been this sort of editing joke that the first book was so large because she refused to really have it edited, and then the book got quite a bit smaller. I had taken a class with Arthur Levine, who was her American editor, but it's just I don't think any book. Yeah, it always serves the book, but also just as a writer, I think we become stronger and stronger writers with each book.
Oh yeah,
and
I totally agree with that.
I think the editor is paramount in that growth.
Yeah, and the editor doesn't take the place of your friends and family who tell you probably exactly what you want to hear about your content. An editor is, someone who is outside of you personally and is going to offer you really the best feedback on the work itself. So, Ellie, let's go ahead.
Lena, I wanted to add one thing, and that is, even if editing, it is an investment, and I would offer that even if it's your neighbor or a librarian or your English teacher from 5th grade, having another set of eyes on your manuscript is really important. And while obviously professional editors love the business, you can find friends and family that will help you and be able to at least help you with some grammar and typos. So, just offering that.
I wouldn't ask my friends or family, let me say that.
I appreciate that.
I know they're going to just tell me what I want to hear and kind of be done with me. So somebody like me needs a real editor. Okay.
I laughed.
Let's get into the weeds here a little bit, Ellie. So, what are some simple things that all authors can do to improve their titles?
Okay, the number one thing with self-editing is it's absolutely every writer read their book aloud to themselves they will save themselves a lot of heartache. If it sounds awkward, it is awkward, and revisions need to be made.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Not even with just dialogue, but the entire narrative. I think prose that's written beautifully can be read aloud, and it should sound engaging. But other than that, adverbs. What Stephen King says, the path to hell is paved with adverbs. For me, I don't know, I'm not one for writers groups so much, but I do think reading it aloud is probably the strongest way to serve the manuscript.
That's really great. I would add to that, take a look at the way that traditionally published books are organized and make sure that you have organized your own work in that same sort of way. In the takeaway, there's a slide here that, once you can look at it at your leisure, but, make sure you understand the book parts, the traditional book parts. So what a title page is, the copyright page, where those typically appear, within the work. Are you going to have a dedication or acknowledgement? What about a table of contents? And please, 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 if you are going to have a foreword, which is basically sort of an introductory piece that's done by someone other than the author, usually an expert in the field if it's like a nonfiction book. Forward is spelled F-O-R-E-W-O-R-D. It's not forward like you move forward, down a road. So make sure you spell it right. And then, as far as organizing your chapters, I'm a big lover of, rather than chapter numbers, that you actually have a description of what that chapter title is. And then for nonfiction work, if you have reference or indexes, make sure you've done the work there to include that kind of information in your book.
And Microsoft Word also makes it easy on us. You can tell if you're overusing words, if you have too many prepositional phrases. That's something that would come up in an editorial review, and we would, put it out there as something to fix. But you should be able to use those tools and help strengthen the manuscript as well. I mean,
at least spell check, right? Please do spell check.
We did a lot of books that, forward went into spell check, but no, you're right, spell check.
Yeah. Yeah, and Word has great spell check. Almost any writing program now has pretty good spell check. So is there anything else? What about fact checking? How does somebody go about that?
Here, fact checking, if it's fiction or nonfiction, I guess if it's nonfiction, we do that sort of this cursory glance, but and that's what I like about editing as well. You sort of have to know a little bit about a lot of things, just with history, but you'd be surprised how many hours I spend or my editors spend just kind of tracking, like, when was Abe Lincoln shot? These kind of things that doesn't sound right. But for me, beyond grammar and fact checking, just to put a book together properly, is we follow Chicago Manual of Style, but in the last 10 years that we've been doing this, so for me it comes down to uniformity. If you're going to make a stylistic measure, all we want to do is help you, ensure that it's uniform. So if you're writing Christian fiction, typically we don't capitalize the pronouns for deities, but if that's the way you want it done, we just want to make sure that someone has checked to make sure that's uniform throughout. So even beyond the Bible that is Chicago Manual of Style for my small publishing house or my small editing house, is that, just ensure that everything is uniform. And then you'll be taken seriously. remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like if you change a character name, make sure you do it throughout, because suddenly you'll have this new person popping up that really is just a name change.
Find and replace is a great. I always say delete is my favorite button on the on my keyboard. Delete, and then right after that is find and replace.
I love find and replace. That's a miracle, I think. So I think this question is for me. Yeah. So this. So I have been around a long time. I started my career as a book designer at a university press. I had my own little publishing company for a number of years, and most recently I worked with Amazon and CreateSpace, and now with Ingram. So I have been around, it seems like 100 years now, but I have seen the changes as far as independent publishing goes. So in the old days, and I would say old days are about, 5 to 10 years ago, there was still sort of a stigma attached to indie publishing. They called it vanity publishing, whatever, for people that, couldn't get a traditional publishing deal. And everything was still sort of filtered through these gatekeepers of publishers. And so, you had no ability to make your content available unless, you got picked up for publishing by a publishing house. And, within the last especially couple of years, and I really credit Ingram a lot for the heyday of indie publishing that we're seeing now. And a lot of this is through, our print-on-demand company, Lightning Source. So that, anybody can bring a book to market, even a print book at fairly low cost, and the quality of that printed book, is just as good or nearly as good as a traditionally printed book. And you'd be hard pressed to notice, any kind of difference between a traditionally printed book and a digitally printed book through print on demand. So I don't see a stigma so much anymore. Do you want to kind of add some thoughts here, Ellie, on this?
I think the quality has made a huge difference. And we work with authors who have done both and do both. I mean, look at Mary Alice Monroe. She does some indie publishing. She does some traditional publishing. Look at Hugh Howey. He does both, and he does it successfully. We help authors who want to find an agent. And I always say it's not as if you've failed, you just maybe don't have a book that they're looking for right now. And so that's just a matter of getting it, ready for an agent. And I would say in the last 10 years, once a year, we have an author who didn't find an agent right away. They ended up publishing it themselves. And guess what? Within probably, with Lawrence Myers, it was within 3 or 4 months that an agent was calling him to say, hey, this book is fantastic. I want to represent you, and I want to help you get a publisher. I don't think there's a stigma, but I think there are times that, an author should keep all of his or her options open.
Yeah, that's really great. So, Ellie, tell us what you're reading right now.
I know. So I was laughing. A girlfriend of mine just for my birthday gave me Between You and Me, which is it's the Confessions of a Comma Queen, and Mary Norris for editors. She was a 30-year veteran at the New Yorker, and so it's sort of, there are whole chapters just on things that just make the geek in me smile. But as far as just Venus or Mary,
it's called Between You and Me is the title.
Yes, Confessions of a Comic Queen.
Oh, okay.
And
I love that.
Yeah, but it's so funny and irreverent, and it's kind of fun to see this. You know, she's worked with some of the most successful and prolific writers in the last 30 years that are, you know, obviously publishing novels as well, but it's kind of fun to have the insider scoop, too.
Yeah, and I am reading this terrible book, and I laugh about it. I'm part of a book club, and this is a book that one of our members, you know, it was her time to pick, and it's Ireland, a Novel by Frank Delaney, and I'm sure some people have read this and loved it. It puts me to sleep, and I can't wait to be done with it. So it's not one of my favorites that I've read for a while. I'm also reading The Paris Wife by Paula McLean that I love, and so I can't wait to finish Ireland and then move on to The Paris Wife. Okay, so go ahead.
So I just finished a book that was set in Paris, and it makes me want to go to Paris. It will happen to you.
The Paris Wife. Yeah, The Paris Wife is a novel about Hemingway and his first wife in Paris. So it's really a great book. So that kind of leads really great into this next question: how do we think good reading and good writing are connected? So for me, it's like you have to be a reader to be a writer, and you know all the major writers of our time, you know, are also great proponents of reading. I believe that you know, as a writer, you should frequent your library and your local bookseller, and you know, become a patron and a customer of those stores and institutions, because you know a lot of communities have lost, especially their bookstores. I'm happy here at Ingram to actually report out that you know the last few years there's more store openings than closings, and so that's always great. But I'll make the pitch here. You know, as you're writing your book, you know, lean and learn to meet and know your local librarian and your local bookseller. They can add a lot of you know, good advice to you as you're moving through the process. I think we need to move on a little here. So,
I wanted to say one.
Okay.
I just wanted to say one thing with Amazon having bought Goodreads, that your local bookstore is the best place just to go and ask for a recommendation for your next book.
Yeah, and especially look at books on the shelf. Look at covers. You know which ones that the bookstore has put face out. They've done that for a reason. And you know, and become a customer of the store prior to you know finishing your book and then wanting to work with that bookseller to support your book. It just will go a long way in the success that you have with that store. So one of the top things indie authors publishing with IngramSpark should know. So here we're getting into a little bit more of things that you need to make sure you have in order. So if you're working with IngramSpark, I advise you to look at IngramSpark's file creation guide that's under the help menu of IngramSpark. And finally, when you are finished the editing and design of your book, you will need the final digital files. So on the print side, you'll need 2 PDFs, one of the interior and one of the cover. And then on the ebook side, if you're wanting to make an ebook available, you'll need an EPUB of the interior and a JPEG of the cover. And in terms of ISBNs, which is the industry standard book identifier number, you will need a different and a unique number for every format of the book. So what that means is that the paperback version would have a different number than, say, the hardcover version, and then again, an ebook, or if you do translate, the translated version. So each format of the book would have a different number. And, be prepared to, as a self-publisher, to know how to price your book. And in IngramSpark, since we're global, you can make the book available, around the world. You'll need to also be able to price it in multiple currencies, and we provide some assistance there. And be prepared to, if you're going to make the book available through our distribution network, to discount it so that retailers will be encouraged to order your book. Right now, 55% is the standard on the print side that you should consider. And then plan to, to know how you're going to market the book prior to publishing. I really encourage you, and Ellie, I think, talked about this some. If you, are wanting to get your book reviewed, and I highly encourage you to go down the path to get pre-publication reviews. Allow at least 3 months prior to publication and making your book available to the world to build in time there for that. Anything you want to add there, Ellie?
I mean, beyond the reviews, and a strong book cover, no, I think you offered good sage advice.
So Lauren mentioned at the very beginning that we would be giving away something. So here's the giveaway question. What book is on Ellie's nightstand? So the first person that responds in the chat window to the answer to that, then you're going to win a prize. So I encourage you to do that right now. So Ellie, do you want to go through this slide again?
And this, I think, is just to say, so we're really very excited to be in business now, our 10th year, and just that we're giving an extra. We always give IngramSpark authors a 10% discount after their editorial review. And so this summer, we're also giving an extra 10%, so a total of 20% to IngramSpark authors. And again, the editorial review, what I've found, it's never going to hurt to find ways to strengthen your manuscript. But also, I think it's just good to have some general feedback moving forward.
Oh, and happy anniversary, Presk and Ellie. That's tremendous.
Thank you. It's such a fun team. But also, yeah, you can upload the manuscript. And just to reiterate, that editorial review, I mean, even if it's stuff that you ultimately want to fix yourself, it's good just to have a heads up. And while I say any, a librarian or a neighbor can maybe do a proofread for you, it's good to have a new, fresh set of eyes. And, for folks that want to see their book on a bookshelf, having an editor is important. It's probably, besides a really strong book cover, when you just talk about content, I don't think you can, I frankly do not think you can do it alone. I think when you look at traditional publishers and that whole team they have behind them, the only way to have a leg up is to, sort of create that team yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Lauren, do you want to jump back in here?
Sure thing. So yeah, that mostly concludes our webinar. So what you see on the screen right now is contact information for Presk. And again, you don't need to see this right this second if you don't want to. This is available to you after the presentation. But we did want to give you the contact information for Presk if you want to take advantage of the offers. And then on the next slide, you will see our contact information. Again, the people that who've been monitoring the question and answer today is from our customer care team, and they are the experts when it comes to everything Spark. But you can also email us directly at ingramsparksupport@ingramcontent.com, and we will be glad to answer any questions. But with that in mind, I do have a couple questions that have come in. And so one of those is, what are the most important emerging markets when it comes to translations?
And I think, Ellie, you mentioned this, from English to Spanish and Spanish to English, back and forth. I would probably agree with that, especially
also,
children's books.
And I think more and more in the next decade, I mean, obviously there's China out there with a lot of readers, but, you know, I think it's just, at this point, if you're going to spend the money on it, I think thematically it really has to make sense with the manuscript. But to say, I would say probably Spanish is the strongest right now.
Yeah, even in the U.S.
Exactly.
Okay. Any more
Great.
questions, Lauren?
One more follow-up question to that. How exactly do sales work when it comes to selling in other countries through IngramSpark?
Since IngramSpark, just by its nature, is a global platform, so when you make a book available in IngramSpark, you have the ability to also put in, like I said before, currencies in for other markets. So when you list a book with a U.S. price, say you also list with a pound, sterling pound price for the UK market, and then a euro price for most of Europe, then your book's automatically going to be available in Ingram's distribution platform. So it's fairly easy to do that.
I wanted to add, I own a small publishing company here in Charleston, and we published our first book. It's called Flight of the Golden Geese, and it's by one of the authors is in Canada and the other one at the London School of Economics, obviously in London. And so I was sort of surprised it was that easy to get this book up there. And I finished the process. They make it so easy on IngramSpark that I thought, that's it?
That's it.
When you're out there, I thought I'd be trying to navigate the pound, the euro and currencies, and it's pretty much the entire IngramSpark, I mean, it's pretty intuitive, but that itself kind of just, you don't even have to think about it. It's sort of done for you. Which is nice.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
Perfect. I think
Lauren, do we have a winner of our giveaway, and exactly what is our giveaway?
Yes, we do. So our winner is Jade Ebby, I'm sorry, and we have their address, and they will be receiving a copy of On Writing by Stephen King, which is just a fantastic book. Everyone I know who's read it and who's a writer just absolutely adores the way he takes you through the process and his kind of thoughts on the entire practice of writing. So we really hope you enjoy it, and we have your contact information, so we'll be sure to get you that as soon as possible. So if we don't have any other questions, then I think that mostly wraps us up for today. We want to thank you all for joining us. Again, if you want to watch this again or share it with team members, it is recordable. It is recorded, and you can share it at any time. Just log in just like you did today. You can also print out the resources on the left-hand side, and we do have these upcoming webinars, as we mentioned earlier, and we would really encourage you to join in because our basic goal is just to provide you as much information as possible to be the best authors you can be. So thank you again, and we hope to hear from you soon. Bye.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Ellie.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Lauren.